Hello everyone, good afternoon, Sage here, and we are live from the 𝐊𝐴𝐿𝐼𝐚 studios. You're watching the Market Movers show. Well, the ASX 200 is struggling for direction amid a tug of war between weakness in heavyweight financials and gains in gold and tech stocks. And on that note, let us zoom our lenses on the market performance today and the drivers under the spotlight. While the ASX seesaws, the US equity market surged and bond yields softened after a jump in the US inflation was viewed as not sufficient enough to make the US Federal Reserve alter its easy monetary policy stance. The Australian market participants seem to be sitting on light positions ahead of a holiday extended weekend, potentially keeping gains muted in the Australian share market today. And looking at the sectoral charter, financial stocks are weighing most of the benchmark index, ASX 200. Challenger Limited led the losses, followed by wealth manager AMP Limited. AMP has appointed former State Street Global Advisors MD Shaun Johnson to run AMP Capital, ahead of its demerger from the flagship funds management division. And Mr Johnson served as a senior managing director and chairman of the investment committee of State Street Global Advisors. As AMP Capital CEO, Mr Johnson will lead its international growth strategy and the proposed demerger of the private markets businesses, which he expected to complete in the first half of 2022. Mr Johnson will begin his role on the 28th of June 2021. The Big Four banks also declined between 1% and 1.6%. Besides the energy index falling due to the oil prices hovering at over two-year highs, crude oil prices ticked up on Thursday to their highest level in more than 2 years in a volatile trading session, and after new US unemployment claims fell to their lowest since the COVID-19 pandemic began. The optimism for strong economic recovery helped fuel demand for crude oil. And the biggest percentage loser was fuel retailer Ampol Limited. Also in the energy space, the Australian energy players such as Woodside Petroleum, AGL, Next Beach Resources and Origin Energy are trading in the red today. Let's now move on. Heavyweight miners BHP Group, Rio Tinto and Fortescue Metals Group are trading in the red amid commodity price dips witnessed since the last few days. And on Thursday, the iron ore prices advanced as benchmark steel futures in Shanghai rose for a second consecutive day. The most active iron ore futures for September month delivery on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange closed 0.7% higher at 1,178 yuan per tonne. However, the gains were capped as China reiterated its goal to rein in commodity inflation. Now, bucking the sombre mood, tech stocks skyrocketed, led by AI data developer Appen. Then market darling Afterpay jumped to mark its highest levels in a month, and software maker Altium Limited also recorded gains. Investors closely tracked cues from Wall Street, which rose after the US inflation data appeared to support the Federal Reserve's assertion that the country wave of heightened inflation currently seen will be temporary. Investors weighed a larger than expected surge in consumer prices against promising data on claims for unemployment benefits, and equity investors seem to have put their inflation worries to rest for some time, that a higher than expected rise in inflation could push policymakers to reconsider their stimulus measures. However, it is to be seen if the optimism is dampened by long-standing investors' fears in the days ahead. It is feared that the US economy's rebound from the COVID-19 crisis is causing overheating and may force the central bank to wind back its ultra-loose programs earlier than previously indicated. At the same time, the latest inflation readings may bring bond tapering plans under discussion at the FOMC meeting scheduled for next week. Looking at the Australian gold stocks, they climbed as the bullion prices nudged up after the US inflation data. The Australian gold miners such as De Grey Mining, Evolution Mining, Ramelius, Newcrest Mining and Northern Star Resources are skyrocketing today. And before we move on to the next segment to discuss the major market movers of the day, it's time for a short break. We'll be back right after this.
New Zealand is unique, and 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐴 TV is here to bring you all the latest news and trending market updates. Streaming across multiple platforms, so no matter where you are, whether it be at the beach or on the farm, you can count on the team here at 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐴 TV to be your home for accessing the latest valuable insights into global issues that are affecting New Zealanders. Subscribe to our channels across YouTube, Facebook, also visit 𝐊𝐼𝐴.co.nz.
Welcome back. This is 𝐶𝐠𝐴𝐺 from the 𝐊𝐼𝐼𝐴 studios in Sydney. And if you've just joined us, we are amidst the Market Movers Report. And next in our show, let us look at the major stock movers during the day for today. The renowned gambling and entertainment player SkyCity Entertainment Group soared on providing its earnings guidance for the financial year of 2021. It expects the EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortisation, in the range of 247 to 253 million Australian dollars, and NPAT, or net profit after tax, between 84 to 88 million Australian dollars. Specialty retail fashion chains operator Premier Investments retail segment soared on, increasing its earnings forecast for the financial year 2021. The company expects the EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, to mark an uptick of 82% to 92% on the underlying EBIT of the previous financial year. Let's now take a look at iSelect shares, who have touched over a one-year high on the partnership deal with insurance firms. The online product comparison company, iSelect Limited, announced that it has signed a health insurance policy distribution agreement with insurance major Bupa. Let's take a look at what news is being shared from Domino's Pizza Enterprises, who have seen their shares jump on entering into a binding agreement to acquire 100% of Domino's Taiwan for roughly 79 million Australian dollars. And besides, the company stated it is revising its future store count outlook in Asia from 1,500 stores to 1,900 stores by 2030 to 2032. Let's now move on and take a look at the ASX listed stocks that traded on the downside. Australia's Crown Resort slipped as Victoria's state extends the timeline on the inquiry, and Australia's Victorian state extends time and funding given to the Royal Commission probing the casino operators' operations in the state to allow it to investigate a wider range of matters. And the move steps up the duration and depth of the regulatory scrutiny on Crown at a time when it is trying to overturn a suspension of its new Sydney casino licence and is balancing buyout talks with suitor Star Entertainment Group. And meanwhile, as per the latest market update, tech player Iress is trading in the red despite updating on implementing measures to accelerate growth and returns. A comprehensive board-level review of business acceleration and enhanced target returns commenced in February and is well advanced. The company is focusing on accelerating growth in earnings per share, improving return on invested capital and optimising capital structure. And now we're just going to take another short break before we move on to the next segment to discuss the major market movers of the day. Crypto talk by 𝐊𝐼𝐼𝐴. The crypto market has been red hot given the Bitcoin rally since the past year. And now the most famous cryptocurrency has got competitors: Dogecoin and Ethereum. If the crypto market excites you, tune in with me, Sage, to know the latest developments about the existing digital currencies and the new ones that are joining the race. I'll help you understand the opportunities and the risks the crypto market has in store for you. For all the digital currency related developments, continue watching Crypto Talk by 𝐊𝐼𝐼𝐴. Welcome back to 𝐊𝐼𝐼𝐴 TV. Sage here, and you are watching the Market Movers. We are about to glimpse at the crypto space, so please stay tuned. After hitting the week's high of $38,425 Bitcoin fell 2.7%, lower to reach $36,410 Dogecoin was down as well, 4.7%, while its bigger counterpart Ethereum fell 5.4% on Thursday. Overall, in a major boost for cryptocurrency market, El Salvador has officially adopted the Bitcoin as legal tender after the Congress gave nods to President Nayib Bukele's proposal to embrace the digital coin. With this, the Central American nation becomes the first country worldwide to officially adopt Bitcoin as a legal currency. And meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund said on Thursday it has economic and legal concerns regarding the move by El Salvador to make Bitcoin a parallel legal tender. To give you a backdrop in yet another cryptocurrency meltdown, Bitcoin prices earlier this week as officials in the US were able to recover most of the ransom paid to hackers that targeted the Colonial Pipeline, the largest pipeline system for refined oil products in the country. And the recovery of Bitcoin ransom seems to have undermined its libertarian and free of government control case, raising arms that Bitcoin is not as untouchable and secure as advocated. The recent pullback was widely anticipated after a power-packed rally seen earlier this year. Given Bitcoin's history of bouts of deep drawdowns after such rallies, and having said that, the ongoing volatility in the crypto market seems to have given a lesson to investors to only invest the money they can afford to lose without ending up in financial troubles. Overall, the cryptocurrencies have been weighed down heavily by the regulatory clampdown in China, and not to mention the tweets from Tesla CEO Elon Musk. And that's all for now. Thanks so much for your time joining us on that report. Stay tuned for more live market updates on 𝐊𝐶𝐴 TV across the economy, markets and sectors. Sage signing off.